Cox has made it clear that their investigation has now established that he had been radicalized by a leftist ideology, which drove him to do this. That's just
I'm sorry, excuse me, when?
Yesterday, he said that.
No. When was he radicalized? In the 6 months that he did remote college? Not
I don't know when he was radicalized, but I do know.
What you just said
I do
is not
know
true.
the very reasonable-sounding governor of Utah has made it clear that the
he hasn't made it
you may
clear.
not want
he
to
said
hear
this.
this.
Is an ongoing investigation.
You may not want to hear it,
it,
Destiny. But the reality is, the investigators, according to the governor of Utah, have established that he was radicalized to a leftist ideology that drove him to murder Charlie Kirk. Now, let me just ask you.
That's just not true.
Let me just ask
There's
you.
no way to deal with it.
Okay,
You're living in a
accusing the governor of lying.
Yeah.
That's your prerogative. But
sure.
If it turns out to have been somebody with a leftist ideology who wanted to shut up Charlie Kirk, would you condemn that?
I won't condemn anything until the president of the United States can go on air and say, all of us need to calm down.
So you won't condemn the murder of Charlie Kirk until Donald Trump says something.
I'm a YouTuber. Leftists and Democrats have been condemning and turning down the temperature, condemning violence, turning down the temperature for a decade. Donald Trump can't go on TV and say, all of us need to calm down.
Right.
Can you tell me why he cannot?
Why would you expect anybody, Destiny?
You can't answer that. Can you answer that question? Why can't Trump go on TV and say, all of us should be less violent?
Why do you think
Trump say that?
Why do you think
your behavior contingent on Donald Trump?
Insane right now.
Why do you think?
No,
let me ask a question.
On Donald Trump?
Let me ask a question.
Because he's the president of the United States of America and the leader of the opposing political party.
You have a huge audience of young men who listen to everything you have to say. So when it doesn't matter. You have a huge audience, and because of the fact that you have a huge audience, you have a responsibility to not turn. No, it hasn't. It hasn't been broken. I actually care about the country and want to bring people together. You do the opposite. You represent the worst of us, Destiny.
Out the crime statistics? Not exactly like.
You need conservatives to be afraid of getting killed when they go to events so that they look to their leadership to turn down the temperature. The issue is right now, they don't feel like there's any fear. Like, I don't know. It's like memes. It's just memes to everybody, I guess. I don't know, bro. I don't know. I don't care. I'm playing video games. Okay, I'm done today. I don't give a fuck. God, it's going to be so fucking gay if I get killed in the next fucking 2 months of shit I'm doing. Well, the cuck shit out here. Please don't anybody make any actual fucking, the most cucked, weak-ass, fucking bullshit-ass speeches on my side. God, if it happens, holy shit, I'm going to make a death note before I go out to go live and not. God, it's so cucked. It's so optics cucked.
But when you say that socialism has never worked anywhere, and statements like that get very widely made on American television.
Wait, real quick, because you're about to, I don't care. I know you have a prepared answer to that. I'm not using the meme. Socialism has never worked anywhere it's tried. What I'm saying is I don't think central planning has worked. My critique is much more specific here, and I would be, like, if you have, like, I'm curious, because I would have to go read more on them, because every time I've tried to read on places, so the only places I'm familiar with are, like, Vietnam, or a lot of the older Soviet Union, or some places in, like, Cuba. Like, my understanding is that when we try to socially plan a lot of stuff, you just can't do it. There's so much for a government to keep track of. It's bureaucratic, it's slow, you can't respond to changing market conditions. So I'm saying central planning specifically doesn't seem to be a solution to an economy. That's what I'm saying specifically, not like the socialism has never worked meme.
Okay, I'm glad you're being more specific than that. But I would encourage you to read Maurice Dobbs' book, Soviet Economy Since 1917. Maurice Dobbs was a lecturer at the University of Cambridge in Britain, and I have, quotations from the book right in front of me. In 1928, they launched the 5-year plans in the Soviet Union. By 1938, coal production had multiplied by 3.5 times. They had increased the rate of electrification tenfold. There were 20 new tramway systems. The number of hospital beds in rural areas had doubled. The Soviet Union at that point was the largest tractor producer in the world, and they were the largest locomotive producer in the world, right? This notion that socialism has only resulted in people getting poorer or making everyone equally poor is false. In 1917, Russia was an impoverished agrarian country. By the mid-1930s, they were an industrial superpower. For a country that was strong enough to defeat Nazi invaders, They were a country that eventually invented
hold on.
space
A lot
travel.
of this is just not true. So the Soviet Union was not strong enough to defeat the Nazi invaders. Firstly, in the early part of the war, the Nazis were involved in lending a lot of things like rubber and other materials to the Soviet Union. And later on, the Lend-Lease programs from the Western capitalist nations were a large part of the reasons of why the Soviet Union was able to field as much armor and everything as they could. These aren't controversial claims. Lend-Lease was a huge program that was massively successful to supplying the USSR with supplies.
It was a global alliance, an anti-fascist coalition.
Sure, but it's
Britain
disingenuous to say that
it's Nazis on their own either.
Sure,
they
but
had help as well. The United States had
I'm
help.
I'm not saying that these are sure. These are what about? Sure. I understand that. These are whataboutisms that aren't relevant to what I'm saying. Is that the idea that the USSR was some strong superpower that on its own could stand up to the Nazis? That is absolutely not true. They absolutely needed outside help. First from the Nazis themselves, and then once Hitler turned on Stalin, then from other Western nations via Lend-Lease. Secondly, you're talking about like how the Soviet Union was able to accomplish so much in terms of like getting electricity out to rural areas and hospitals and all of this. This is just industrialization. Lots of countries have done this under capitalism, under other economic systems, under socialism, and also part of Russia's rush to industrialization led to massive famines that are to this day debated about whether or not they're considered genocidal. So I don't know if I like the idea of like, well, I can modernize a country if I tell everybody to stop growing crops, starve to death 10 million people, and make some of them work in factories. I don't know if that's a good argument saying like, well, look how quickly we industrialized our country. I don't know if I agree that that's a success of central planning.
I think you can look all over the developing world today and see a lot of free market countries that have not industrialized and have not done what Russia and China both did during the 20th century, right? This notion that socialism never creates growth, it's never worked anywhere, all it leads to is people being poorer. Look at Russia in 1917. Look at Russia by the mid-1930s.
Okay, hold on. We're backing
up Russia by the 1970s. Look at China in 1949. Look at China today, the second largest economy in the world. That's a big fat lie. And I am sick of hearing it because it contradicts reality. Socialism has raised countries up out of poverty. Meanwhile, all over the developing world,
this is like literal. These are like
still illiterate, where people don't have a basic electricity, right?
I feel like I'm running down.
Let's
running down like a dialogue tree right now. I'm talking about central planning. I understand that you've probably heard a million times, socialism makes people poor or whatever. I would never make that claim.
That's false.
Well, no, but I would say that like the industrialization of the world. So much the same way when people say like, oh, capitalism is what's causing global warming. I don't think that's true. I think it's industrialization is what's causing global warming, right? We consume a lot of stuff. We produce a lot of emissions as a result of that. Like it's industrialization. When you talk to me about how, like, well, the living standards from the 1900s to the 2000s has increased. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, capitalism did that. And I'm also not going to say in socialist countries, socialism did that. Technological innovations, medical innovations, agricultural innovations, like these are the things that have driven a lot of this. So I'm not giving you the meme that socialism hasn't helped any country. I'm sure that we can find, whether we want to bring up Catalonia or other types of like smaller socialist societies that have existed to thrive for small periods of time. I'm sure we can find examples of that. What I'm saying is that central planning as a means of controlling an entire economy doesn't seem to be a realistic policy. If you want to talk more specifically about the USSR, we can, but I feel like that is not a good example for you to go to show off the successes of central planning when millions of people starved to death in that society as a result of central planning.
I think millions of people starved to death prior to the Russian Revolution. As an agrarian economy, when there was a famine, people starved to death all the time. Now, you're talking about specific famines that took place, but prior to the Soviet Union, Soviet agriculture didn't have, or Russian agriculture and the surrounding countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they didn't have tractors, right? It was the Soviet Union that mechanized agriculture. It was the Soviet Union that electrified the entire place. They actually had the biggest hydroelectric power plant in the world in 1931, the Dnieper Dam. The fact that you gloss over the transformation of a deeply impoverished country into a country that was a superpower and is widely acknowledged to be a superpower, and you just say, yeah, but there were a bunch of famines, so none of that counts. That's completely disingenuous, right? The whole world realizes what happened there, and the whole world realizes what's happened in China. And furthermore, if you want to see countries that have been part of our global free market capitalist system and how they've flourished, take a look at Haiti. That country has NAFTA-style trade agreements with the United States. People eat dirt mixed with oil, right? The amount of poverty there is pretty big, right? And that's a free market country. But no one ever says Haiti's problems are because of capitalism. But all of Venezuela's problems are because of socialism. Take a look at Nigeria. This is the top oil-producing country in Africa. They have been doing business with Chevron and Shell Oil for decades, right? I mean, if oil and wealth and selling on the market would make them prosperous, they'd be a wealthy country. Their life expectancy is only 59. The rate of illiteracy the rate of literacy in terms of population that can read is not even 60%, right? The unimproved drinking water rates. Take a look at what the CIA World Factbook says about Nigeria, the top oil-producing country in Africa. That's what the free market has to offer, right? Free market capitalism is not industrializing countries. Why don't you compare India to Russia and China, for example, right? India did not have a socialist revolution. It had a nationalist revolution. It got its independence from the British. That was a good thing. But it did not have socialist construction or central planning. And compare it to Russia and China throughout the 20th century. Compare the conditions of the people in India to the people of Russia and China, and you can look pretty clearly there. And in fact, a lot of the industrialization that has happened in India happened because of the Soviet Union and China, right? It was the Soviet Union built steel mills in India. China is now doing a lot of business there. So this notion that capitalism is industrializing countries, you can talk about the Asian tigers. I'm happy to address the Asian tigers. That's an example. But I mean, all these immigrants that are pouring into the United States on the border right now, countries like Honduras, free market, capitalist country, where there are people that don't even speak Spanish, people don't have running water, people don't have electricity. Guatemala, take a look at Mexico. These free market countries have been looted and destroyed by international corporations, whereas countries that have central planning have raised people out of poverty, they've industrialized, they've electrified, they've wiped out illiteracy very consistently, despite the problems. And there are big problems. I don't deny that.
To try to say that industrialization in the Soviet Union was successful, even though these were done on the backs of massive famines that were a great showcase of the failures in central planning as a support for central planning, is
famines never happen under capitalism. People never starve under. I mean, this is obscure. And then you take a couple isolated famines and make them the characterization of an entire country industrializing and becoming a superpower. This is ridiculous. That would be like me saying that the mass deaths in the U.S. Civil War prove that American capitalism doesn't work. That would be like me saying the Great Depression proves that capitalism doesn't work. I mean, that's ridiculous.
You could
a whole country becomes a global superpower, invents space travel, electrifies the entire place, is building some of the biggest hydroelectric power plants in the world. People that lived in huts are suddenly living in modern apartment buildings with electricity, but none of that counts because there was a famine along the way. That is absurd.
I'm not saying
miracles took place. The whole world was trying to be like the Soviet Union at that point.
I don't want to.
Every former socialist country of Eastern Europe polls overwhelmingly show people saying life was better. That's not just in Russia. Soviet nostalgia is at an all-time high.
I don't want us to talk over top each other. So Destiny, go ahead. I'm going to give Destiny the floor for a minute.
So is nostalgia under the old American system. People nostalgia.
But they lived under it. They know how horrible it is, Destiny.
Okay. Let's rein this back. So let's rein this back. Destiny, go ahead.
I don't see any Nazi nostalgia in Germany. I'll tell you that much.
Really?
I don't.
About it.
That never happens under capitalism, right? I mean, there wasn't huge famines in India caused by the British Empire. There wasn't huge famines in Ireland caused by British capitalism. I mean, but
like this is the okay.
There were annual deaths of starvation in Russia all the time before the revolution. There were annual deaths of starvation in China all the time, but none of that is because of the old system.
Okay, hold on.
Industrialized the place. They've actually gotten them out of the primitive.
Okay.
Them for that.
Destiny, why?
This is absurd.
Caleb, Destiny, why is he arguing your point for you?
Because saying that, there were massive famines in the Soviet Union, which a lot of them weren't as bad as the ones that happened in Ukraine and Kazakhstan, saying that there were famines before central planning, and then saying they were there after central planning, that's my argument. Yeah, central planning. So I don't know.
It was central planning that mechanized agriculture. They got them out of those situations. It was central planning that actually cured these problems. It was central planning that made China, instead of being a sick man of Asia that has mass impoverishment and mass famines all the time, into being the second largest economy in the world. You're blaming the system that cures famines and cures these problems, even though it takes a while to do it, perhaps. You know, they are the ones that actually are responsible for the industrialization. You're blaming them for something that happened under your system all the time.
I'm not.
When the British controlled China, there were famines all the time.
Okay.
And with communists in power in China, they have become the second largest economy on earth. They have wiped out poverty. The IMF and the World Bank is praising everything that they have done, but you blame them for what? I mean, this is ridiculous.